Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the center of the Grand Chamber. Around her, representatives from 400 species watched from their seats. The chamber was enormous. It floated at the heart of Axiom Prime, the great station that served as neutral ground for all council business. Light from a dozen different suns filtered through the crystal ceiling. The air carried the mixed scents of hundreds of worlds. Sarah had stood here many times before. She had argued for trade agreements. She had pleaded for military support. She had celebrated victories and mourned losses alongside these beings. Today would be different. She looked down at the small device in her hand. The speech it contained was short. She had written it herself, though committees on Earth had approved every word. Her hands did not shake. She had made peace with this moment months ago. Distinguished representatives of the Galactic Council, she began. Her voice carried clearly through the translation systems. I come before you today with a formal announcement from the United Human Systems. The chamber quieted. Even the Valith delegation, who usually whispered among themselves during human speeches, fell silent. Something in Sarah's tone had caught their attention. Effective immediately, humanity is withdrawing from all treaties, agreements, and partnerships with the Galactic Council. We are ending our participation in joint military operations. We are closing our trade routes through Council space. We are recalling all human citizens currently residing in Council territories. The silence lasted 3 heartbeats. Then the chamber exploded. Voices rose from every direction. Translation systems struggled to keep up with the flood of questions, protests, and demands. The Kreth representative, a massive being covered in blue scales, pushed forward from his seat. The Lorathi delegation huddled together in urgent conversation. Only the Valith remained calm. Their lead representative, a tall figure with silver skin and 4 arms, actually smiled. Order. The council speaker, an ancient Mallory whose shell had turned white with age, struck his staff against the floor. Order in the chamber. The noise gradually faded. All eyes returned to Sarah. This decision is final, she continued. We wish the council well. We hope that in time, there may be better understanding between our peoples. Until then, we ask only that our departure be respected. She bowed once, in the formal style the council preferred. Then she turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden quiet. Ambassador Chen. The speaker's voice cracked with age and shock. You cannot simply leave. There must be discussion. Negotiation. Sarah paused at the door. She looked back at the assembled representatives. For a moment, something like sadness crossed her face. With respect, Speaker, there has been discussion. There has been negotiation. For 30 years. She shook her head slowly. We have said everything we came to say. Goodbye. The door closed behind her. In the corridor outside, her staff waited. Their faces were pale but determined. They had known this was coming. They had prepared for it. Lieutenant Commander Jackson fell into step beside her. The ships are ready, Ambassador. All human personnel across the station have been notified. Evacuation begins in 2 hours. Sarah nodded. And the other stations? Same timeline. Every human embassy, every trade office, every military attachment. By this time tomorrow, there won't be a single human citizen left in council space. They walked quickly through corridors that had become familiar over the years. Sarah passed the cafe where she had shared drinks with the Mallory delegation after signing the border accords. She passed the garden where she had taught the young Kreth prince about Earth's flowers. She passed the memorial wall where human names stood alongside alien ones, honoring those who had died defending council space from the swarm. She did not slow down. She did not look back. Behind her, in the Grand Chamber, chaos continued to build. This is outrageous. The Kreth representative slammed his massive fist against his podium. Humans cannot simply abandon their obligations. We have binding treaties. Treaties they are clearly choosing to break. The Valith ambassador replied smoothly. His name was Velith, and he had opposed human interests at every turn for 20 years. Perhaps we should let them go. The council functioned perfectly well before humanity arrived. It will function perfectly well after they leave. Will it? The voice came from the Lorathi section. Ambassador Kira stood slowly. She was small by galactic standards, barely reaching the chest of most other species, but her people were old, and their wisdom was respected. Do any of us truly understand what the humans have been doing for us? Causing trouble mostly, Velith said. Several other Velith laughed. I think, Kira said quietly, that we may be about to find out. The speaker struck his staff again. We must send a delegation after them. Surely this is some misunderstanding, some negotiating tactic. The humans have always been reasonable before. Have we been reasonable with them? Kira asked, but her voice was lost in the growing argument. Across Axiom Prime, humans were moving. They walked quickly through corridors, carrying personal belongings in simple bags. They cleared out offices that had taken years to establish. They said brief goodbyes to colleagues who had become friends, promising nothing about the future. In the medical wing, Dr. James Porter packed his instruments with careful hands. A Kreth nurse watched him with confusion. I don't understand, she said. You have patients here. You can't just leave them. I've transferred all my cases to Dr. Veth, James replied. He didn't meet her eyes. She's fully qualified. They'll be fine. But why? What happened? James paused. He looked at the nurse. She had worked beside him for 3 years. They had saved lives together. He wanted to explain. He wanted to tell her about every small cruelty, every casual dismissal, every time human contributions had been ignored or mocked. He wanted to describe the weariness that had settled into human bones over 3 decades of trying to prove their worth to people who would never see it. Instead, he just shook his head. Ask your council. Maybe they can tell you. In the military section, Commander Angela Reyes stood on the bridge of the HSS Defiant. Through the view screen, she could see the council fleet she had served alongside for 8 years. There was the Kreth dreadnought Thunder of Dawn, whose crew she had helped rescue from a swarm ambush. There was the Lorathi cruiser Wisdom's Path, whose captain had become one of her closest friends. All human vessels have checked in, her first officer reported. Ready to break formation on your command. Angela closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her face showed nothing. Signal the fleet commander. Inform him that all human ships are withdrawing, as per Ambassador Chen's announcement. Thank him for his years of cooperation. And then we go home. The human ships began to move. One by one, they pulled away from their positions in the defensive formation. The gaps they left were immediately visible. The council fleet suddenly looked thinner, weaker, incomplete. On the Thunder of Dawn, Admiral Kreth watched the human ships depart with growing unease. He had fought beside these people. He had seen them sacrifice themselves to save his crew. He had never questioned their loyalty. Should we stop them? His second officer asked. On what grounds? They have committed no crime. They are simply leaving, but the defensive grid. Without their ships, the third quadrant is completely exposed. The Admiral's scales rippled with concern. I know. Contact the speaker. Someone needs to make the humans see reason. But the humans were beyond reason now. They had given reason 30 years of their lives. They had nothing left to give. On Axiom Prime, Sarah Chen boarded the last shuttle leaving the station. She took a seat by the window and watched the great structure shrink behind her. She had spent some of the best years of her life there. She had believed in the Council's promise of unity and cooperation among species. That belief had died slowly, killed by 1,000 small wounds. The vote that denied humans seats on the Security Committee despite human ships defending Council borders, the trade agreement that gave humans the worst terms of any member species, the speeches that praised human enthusiasm while dismissing human naivety, the memorial services where human sacrifices were mentioned last, if at all. She pulled out her personal tablet and began composing her final report to Earth's government. The first line read, "It is done." Behind her, the Galactic Council continued its emergency session. Representatives shouted at each other. Proposals were raised and rejected. Blame was assigned and denied. Through it all, the Velith sat quietly, already planning how to claim the territories and trade routes humans were abandoning. And somewhere in the Lorathi delegation, a young analyst named Thera began pulling up records. Something about the humans' departure felt wrong to her. Not wrong as in mistaken, but wrong as in planned. Deliberate. She started reading through 30 years of council votes, looking for a pattern. She would find it. But by then, it would already be too late. The first human ships reached the border of Sol's territory 12 hours later. They crossed the invisible line and did not look back. Behind them, automated warning beacons activated. broadcasting a simple message in every known language. You are approaching United Human Systems space. Entry is not permitted at this time. Please turn back. We wish you no harm. We simply wish to be left alone. The message played on repeat, patient and polite, and absolutely final. In the Grand Chamber, the emergency session finally ended without resolution. Representatives returned to their quarters, some angry, some confused, some already calculating how to benefit from the situation. Only Ambassador Kira remained behind, staring at the empty seat where humanity's representative had once sat. "What did we do?" She whispered to the empty room. "What did we do to you?" The room had no answer. Across the galaxy, the lights in human embassies went dark, one by one, like stars going out. The message came back the same way every time. Ambassador Velcor of the Malori had sent 17 separate communications to Earth's government. Each one had been answered by the same automated response. "Your message has been received. The United Human Systems thanks you for your communication. We are not accepting diplomatic contact at this time. We wish you well." No explanation, no negotiation, nothing. Velcor stood in his office on Axiom Prime, watching his latest message bounce back with the same polite rejection. His ancient shell creaked as he turned to face his advisors. 3 weeks, he said. 3 weeks of silence. In all my centuries of diplomatic service, I have never encountered anything like this. His chief aide, a young Malori named Senth, shifted uncomfortably. Perhaps they simply need time to cool down. Whatever upset them, surely they will be willing to talk eventually. Will they? Velcor moved to his window. Outside, the great station continued its slow rotation. But something was different now. The corridors were emptier. The docking bays that had once held human merchant vessels sat dark and unused. I am beginning to wonder if we ever really understood them at all. Far across council space, the Kreth Collective was learning that same lesson in much harder ways. Governor Tresh stood in the central square of New Harmony, the largest city on the agricultural world of Kreth Prime 3. Around him, thousands of his people gathered with fear in their eyes. They were hungry. For the first time in 300 years, they were truly hungry. "The transport ships are not coming," his Minister of Supply reported. "We have contacted every trading company in the sector. None of them are willing to make the journey. Why not? We can pay." "It is not about payment, Governor. The route to our world passes through 3 regions that humans used to patrol. Without their ships, pirates have moved in. 2 Lorathi freighters were attacked last week. No one wants to risk the journey." Tresh felt his scales go cold. "But the humans only left 3 weeks ago. How can pirates have become so bold so quickly?" "Because the pirates knew what we did not. They knew how much work the humans were actually doing. It was the same story across a dozen worlds. On the mining colony of Verath 6, production had dropped by 40%. Human engineers had maintained the deep drilling equipment. Without them, machines were breaking down faster than local workers could repair them. On the pleasure world of Sanctuary, tourism had collapsed. Human security teams had kept the peace in the entertainment districts. Now visitors were afraid to come, and, on the frontier station of Last Light, people were dying. Dr. Yellen Morth worked without rest. The Kreeth physician had been transferred to Last Light only 6 months ago. She had expected a quiet posting, a chance to gain experience before returning to a more prestigious position. Instead, she found herself fighting a losing battle against the Crimson Fever. The disease had appeared on Last Light decades ago. It was deadly to Kreth and Lorathi alike, with a mortality rate of nearly 60%. But human doctors had developed a treatment protocol that kept it under control. The infected were identified early, isolated, and treated. Outbreaks were small and quickly contained. Now the human doctors were gone. Yellen had their notes, their protocols, their medications, but she did not have their experience. She did not have their instincts, developed over years of practice. She did not have their ability to spot the subtle early symptoms that made the difference between life and death. The isolation ward was full. The morgue was filling faster. "We need help," she told the station commander. "We need to contact Earth. Beg them to send doctors back." "I have tried." The commander's voice was heavy with exhaustion. "The messages come back unanswered. They will not even speak to us." Yellen looked at her patients, looked at the children with fever-bright eyes, looked at the parents holding their hands. waiting for miracles that she could not provide. Then what do we do? The commander had no answer. On Axiom Prime, Thera continued her research. The young Lorathi analyst had taken over a small office in the archives. Papers covered every surface. Data screens glowed with charts and graphs. She had barely slept in days. "You need to rest," her supervisor told her. "This obsession is unhealthy. Look at this." Thera pulled up a timeline on her screen. Human membership in the council. 30 years. In that time, they applied for 17 different positions on various committees. Security, trade, cultural exchange, scientific cooperation. 17 applications. Do you know how many were approved? I do not keep track of such things. 0. Not one. Every single application was either rejected or simply ignored. Her supervisor frowned. That seems unusual. But surely there were reasons. There were reasons given. The humans were too new, too inexperienced, too different. Always reasons. Thera pulled up another document. Now look at this. The Valeth joined the council only 50 years before humans. In that same 30-year period, they gained seats on 12 committees. The Kreth, who joined a century ago, hold 23 seats. Even my own people, the Lorathi, who have been members for millennia, only hold 31. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that humanity was systematically excluded from any real power or influence in council affairs, and I am suggesting that this was not an accident. She brought up records of council votes, highlighted patterns in yellow and red, showed how certain delegations always voted against human interests, showed how other delegations stayed silent when they should have spoken up. The Valeth led the opposition, but they were not alone. Many species went along with them because it was easier than fighting, because humans were new and strange and did not fit the old ways of doing things. Thera's voice dropped. We treated them like useful servants, strong backs to carry our burdens, clever hands to fix our machines, brave soldiers to fight our wars, but never equals, never truly one of us. Her supervisor stared at the data for a long moment. Even if this is true, what does it matter now? They are gone. It matters because they planned this. Thera pulled up her final piece of evidence. Look at the pattern of human activities over the past 3 years. They trained replacements for every critical position they held. They transferred knowledge to local workers. They documented their procedures in exhaustive detail. They did everything possible to ensure that their departure would cause maximum disruption with minimum actual deaths. I do not understand. They could have left us in chaos. They could have walked away and let everything collapse. Thousands could have died in the first week alone. Thera shook her head slowly. Instead, they gave us a chance. They made sure we would suffer, but they made sure we would survive. They wanted us to feel the pain of their absence, but they did not want to destroy us. Why? Because they are not cruel. Because even after everything we did to them, they still cared about the lives of ordinary people. Thera's eyes were bright, with something that might have been tears. They are teaching us a lesson. And I think the lesson is, this is what you lost. This is who we were. This is what you threw away. Her supervisor reached for the door. I need to bring this to the council leadership. They will not listen. They never do. But she was wrong. This time, they would have no choice. At the border of human space, a council ship drifted in the darkness. It had come to test the humans' resolve, to probe for weaknesses, to find some way through the wall that humanity had built around itself. The automated warning beacons played their message. The ship ignored them and continued forward. It crossed the invisible line into human territory. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a human ship appeared. It was small, barely a patrol vessel, but its weapons were locked on target. A communication channel opened. Council vessel, you have entered United Human System space without authorization. You have 10 minutes to withdraw. This is your only warning. The council captain, a proud Valeth named Sareth, laughed. You would not dare fire on a diplomatic vessel. The consequences would be severe. We are not interested in consequences. We are not interested in negotiation. We are not interested in your presence. You have 9 minutes. Sareth's confidence wavered. Something in the human's voice was different from what he expected. There was no anger, no fear, no uncertainty. Just calm, patient certainty. We only wish to talk. Surely that is reasonable. 8 minutes. The Council demands an explanation for your withdrawal. We have the right to know why you have abandoned your obligations. 7 minutes. If you do not begin withdrawal procedures, we will fire. Your ship will be disabled, towed to the border, and released. You will not be harmed, but you will not pass. Sareth looked at his crew. They were watching him with growing fear. The humans had never acted like this before. They had always been eager to please, willing to compromise, desperate for acceptance. 6 minutes. This is madness, Sareth muttered, but he gave the order to turn back. As his ship retreated across the border, the human vessel maintained its position. It did not pursue. It did not gloat. It simply watched until the Council ship was gone. Then it resumed its patrol, alone in the darkness between stars. On Axiom Prime, news of the incident spread quickly. The Council had been tested. The Council had been found wanting. The humans were not coming back. The humans were not interested in talking. The humans had built a wall around their space and were content to stay behind it, leaving the rest of the galaxy to deal with the consequences. In her small office, Thera finished her report. It was hundreds of pages long, documenting every failure, every insult, every missed opportunity. She sent it to the Council leadership, knowing that most of them would never read it. But some would. Some would understand. And somewhere in the chaos, the first seeds of change were being planted, not by grand speeches or dramatic gestures, but by the quiet, terrible realization that the galaxy had become a darker place. The humans had not started a war. They had not threatened destruction. They had simply stopped helping. And that, it turned out, was far worse. 2 months had passed since humanity's withdrawal. The Galactic Council was meeting again. But the mood was very different from before. Gone was the chaos of those first days. In its place was something quieter and more dangerous. Fear. Speaker Velcor struck his staff against the floor, but it was unnecessary. The chamber was already silent. Every representative knew what was being discussed today. They had all seen the reports. The situation is critical, Velcor announced. His voice was heavy with age and worry. I will not waste time on pleasantries. Minister Krath, please present the economic assessment. The Kreth minister rose slowly. He was a large being, even by Kreth standards, but he seemed smaller somehow. Diminished. Total trade volume across council space has dropped by 34%, he began. Shipping losses to piracy have increased by over 200%. 14 colonies have declared food emergencies. 7 industrial worlds have suspended production due to equipment failures they cannot repair. The economic damage is already in the trillions of credits. He paused, looking around the chamber. And it is getting worse. How is this possible? Demanded a representative from one of the outer systems. The humans were only one species among hundreds. How can their absence cause so much harm? Because they filled gaps that no one else wanted to fill. The voice came from Thera, who had been invited to present her findings. The young Lorathi analyst stood in the center of the chamber, small but unafraid. They took the jobs that others considered beneath them. They went to the places that others avoided. They solved the problems that others ignored. Lies. Ambassador Velith of the Valith rose from his seat. His silver skin gleamed in the chamber's light. The humans were never as important as they claimed. They simply made themselves appear necessary through manipulation and deception. Then explain the food shortages, Thera replied calmly. Explain why your own merchant houses are refusing to ship through regions that humans used to patrol. Explain why the Crimson Fever has killed 300 people on Last Light in the past month. Velith's expression flickered. These are temporary difficulties. We will adapt. Will we? Thera activated her display. A map of council space appeared, with human activities marked in blue. The blue covered everything: trade routes, defense positions, medical outposts, engineering stations, scientific installations. The humans had been everywhere, doing everything, all at once. This is what humanity was doing for us, Thera said. Every blue point is a position they filled. Every blue line is a route they protected. Look at it. Really look at it. The chamber was silent. Some representatives stared at the map with shock. Others looked away in shame. A few, including Velith, refused to look at all. We treated them like servants, Thera continued. And servants, when mistreated long enough, eventually leave. But we never considered what would happen when they did, because we never truly saw them as people whose needs mattered. Enough. Velith's voice was sharp. I will not sit here and listen to this human sympathizer blame us for their abandonment. The humans made their choice. They chose to betray their allies. They chose to let innocent people suffer. They are the villains here, not us. Are they? Thera pulled up a new document. Council Resolution 7742, proposed by the Velith delegation 6 years ago. The resolution that banned humans from serving on the Security Committee despite their ships making up 20% of our border patrol. Another document appeared. Council Resolution 7891, passed 4 years ago. The trade agreement that charged human merchants 40% higher tariffs than any other species. And another. Council Resolution 8156, approved just 2 years ago. The vote that denied human veterans access to the Warriors' Rest retirement colonies, even though hundreds of humans died defending those very colonies from the swarm. The documents kept coming. Vote after vote, insult after insult. 3 decades of casual cruelty, documented in cold official language. This is what we did to them, Thera said. This is why they left. And if we do not acknowledge it, if we do not understand it, then we have learned nothing. The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted accusations and denials. Old alliances fractured as species blamed each other for the current crisis. The Velith delegation walked out in protest, followed by their closest allies. Through it all, Speaker Velcor remained silent. He stared at the map of human activities, at the vast blue network that had held council space together. He had been part of this. He had signed many of those resolutions himself. He had never thought to question them. Now he wondered how many others felt the same. How many had simply gone along with the crowd, never stopping to consider the cost. The emergency session ended without resolution. But something had changed. The truth was out. Everyone had seen it. They could no longer pretend that humanity's departure was random or unjustified. In the days that followed, the consequences continued to mount. On the frontier, the Velith were making their move. Velith had spent months preparing for this moment. With humans gone, vast territories were left unprotected. Trade routes worth billions of credits were waiting to be claimed. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. His fleet moved into the systems that humans had once patrolled. They established outposts on abandoned stations. They forced local populations to accept Velith protection in exchange for heavy taxes. At first, it went smoothly. The regions were weakened by human withdrawal. They had no choice but to accept Velith rule. Then the resistance began. It started small. A Kreth merchant refused to pay tribute. A Lorithi community blocked a Velith patrol. A group of mixed species formed a militia to protect their home station. Where is this coming from? Velith demanded of his commanders. These people should be grateful for our protection. They blame us, his senior commander replied. They blame us for driving the humans away. They say we caused this crisis, and now we are profiting from it. Ridiculous. The humans chose to leave. They do not see it that way. And our troops are spread too thin. We expanded too quickly. If the resistance coordinates their efforts. Velith dismissed the warning. He was certain that the minor species would submit eventually. They always did. That was the natural order of things. He was wrong. On Axiom Prime, Ambassador Kira of the Lorathi called a secret meeting. Representatives from 12 species gathered in her private chambers. They came quietly, through back corridors and hidden entrances. They could not be seen together. Not yet. You all know why we are here, Kira began. The council is failing. The Velith are seizing power, and humanity is gone because we failed them. What do you propose? Asked the Kreth representative. We cannot force the humans to return. No. But we can show them that we understand what happened. We can show them that we are willing to change. How? Kira pulled up a document on her display. A new charter, a reformed council where every species has equal voting rights regardless of age or power. Where contributions are measured by sacrifice, not by wealth. Where no species can be systematically excluded the way humans were. The Velith will never agree to this. The Velith are making enemies of everyone with their expansion. Soon they will have no allies left. Kira's expression was calm but determined. The question is whether we are brave enough to build something better while they destroy themselves. The representatives looked at each other. They were taking a risk. If the Valith learned of this meeting, there would be consequences. But they had all seen the data that Thera had presented. They had all felt the pain of human absence in their own territories. One by one, they agreed to support the new charter. Far away, on Earth, President Chen read the intelligence reports with mixed feelings. His daughter Sarah had returned home after delivering her announcement. She had served her government faithfully, but the years of struggle had worn her down. She needed rest. The reports showed council space falling into chaos. Pirates raiding shipping lanes. Diseases spreading unchecked. The Valith grabbing power while everyone else fought among themselves. "We could help them," said Admiral Rodriguez, his chief military advisor. "A few patrol ships, a handful of medical teams. It would not take much to stabilize the situation." "And then what?" President Chen asked. "We go back to being their servants? We go back to being treated like second-class citizens while they take our sacrifices for granted? Of course not. But there are innocent people suffering out there. People who did nothing wrong." The president stared out his window at the blue sky of Earth. Somewhere out there, beyond the atmosphere, the automated warning beacons continued their endless message. "Entry not permitted. We wish to be left alone." "I know," he said quietly. "That is what makes this so hard. We are not cruel people. We never wanted anyone to suffer. We just wanted to be treated with respect. And we will be," Rodriguez said. "Eventually. But in the meantime, we wait. We watch. We let them feel what it means to be without us." President Chen turned back to his desk. "It is not cruelty. It is education. And some lessons can only be learned through pain." On Axiom Prime, Thera worked through another sleepless night. She had become the unofficial historian of humanity's relationship with the Council. People came to her now with questions, with documents, with confessions of guilt and regret. She learned that humans had saved a Mallory colony from extinction during the Great Drought of 2847. The Council records had credited a Valith relief mission. She learned that humans had developed the cure for the Blue Death, a plague that had killed millions across the galaxy. The patent had been purchased by a Kreth pharmaceutical company, and human involvement had been quietly erased from the official history. She learned about human soldiers who had died holding defensive lines while Council fleets retreated. Their names had been removed from memorial walls because someone decided there were too many humans on the list. Every story was the same. Humans had given everything. The Council had taken it all and given nothing in return. "Why did they stay so long?" Thera asked Ambassador Kira one evening. "Why did they put up with us for 30 years? Kira considered the question for a long moment. "Because they hoped we would change. Because they believed in what the Council was supposed to represent. A galaxy united. Species working together. A future better than the past. And we destroyed that hope." "Yes, we did." Kira placed a gentle hand on Thera's shoulder. "But perhaps we can rebuild it. Not for humanity's sake, but for our own. Because a galaxy that would treat anyone the way we treated them does not deserve to survive." Thera nodded slowly. She thought about the humans she had known. The doctors who had worked endless hours to save alien lives. The engineers who had solved impossible problems. The soldiers who had died defending people who did not even respect them. She thought about the silence on the border, the automated beacons, the wall between stars, and she wondered if the Council would ever deserve to see what was on the other side. 4 months after humanity's withdrawal, the Galactic Council finally voted to send a formal delegation to request their return. The vote was not unanimous. The Valith opposed it, of course, though their influence had weakened considerably. Their expansion into human-vacated territories had united their enemies. Species that had never cooperated before were now working together against Valith aggression. Ambassador Velith still spoke with his usual arrogance, but fewer listened. The delegation was assembled with great care. Ambassador Kira of the Lorathi was chosen to lead it. She was respected by most species and had shown genuine remorse for humanity's treatment. Joining her were representatives from the Kreth, the Mallory, and 3 other species that had historically supported human interests. Their ship departed for the border of human space on a bright morning. The journey took 3 days. During that time, the delegates prepared their arguments, rehearsed their speeches, and practiced looking humble. They reached the border and stopped. The automated beacons played their message, calm and unchanging. Entry not permitted. We wish to be left alone. Kira transmitted a formal request for dialogue. Then they waited. 1 day passed. The delegates grew nervous but maintained their composure. 2 days passed. Some wanted to turn back. Kira refused. 3 days passed. Doubts crept in. Perhaps the humans would never respond. Perhaps they truly wanted nothing to do with the council ever again. On the 4th day, a human ship appeared. It was small, a diplomatic courier rather than a warship. It approached the council vessel slowly and stopped at a respectful distance. A communication channel opened. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the United Human Systems." The voice was familiar. Kira recognized it immediately. The same ambassador who had announced humanity's withdrawal now served as their first point of contact. "Ambassador Chen," Kira replied carefully. "I was not aware you had joined the military." "I have not. The title is honorary, but I was considered the appropriate person to meet with you, given our history." There was no warmth in Sarah's voice, but no hostility either, just professional distance. "You have traveled far to reach us. What do you want?" Kira took a breath. "We want to ask you to come back." Silence on the channel. Then, "Why?" "Because we need you. Because council space is falling apart without you. Because people are dying and suffering and we do not have the ability to stop it." More silence. When Sarah spoke again, her voice was flat. "So you want us to come back because you need our services, not because you value us as partners, not because you respect us as equals, just because you need someone to fix your problems." Kira closed her eyes. This was going to be harder than she had hoped. "That is, not what I meant." "Then explain what you meant." The Kreeth representative stepped forward. "Our people are starving, Commander. Food shipments have stopped. Pirates raid our supply lines. Children go hungry while we argue about politics. Whatever else happened between our species, those children are innocent. They do not deserve to suffer for the Council's failures." "No," Sarah agreed. "They do not. But the Council made choices. The Council decided that humans were not worthy of respect. The Council voted to exclude us, to exploit us, to erase our contributions from history. Those children's parents sat in the Grand Chamber and supported those votes. Their grandparents celebrated when human applications for committee seats were rejected. Generations of your people treated mine like useful animals. We know." The Mallory representative's ancient voice trembled. "We know what we did. We are not here to deny it or excuse it. We are here to acknowledge it and to ask for a chance to make things right." Another long pause. Then Sarah spoke again, her voice slightly softer. "I am going to send you something. A data packet. Read it. Understand it. Then we can talk again." The transmission arrived moments later. Kira opened it and began to read. It was everything. Every insult. Every vote. Every casual cruelty that the Council had inflicted on humanity over 30 years. The data was organized chronologically, with links to official records and personal testimonies. It was hundreds of pages long. "This is what you did to us," Sarah said as they read. "This is why we left. Not because of one incident or one vote, but because of all of it. Because after 30 years of trying to earn your respect, we finally understood that you would never give it." The Lorathi representative on the delegation, a young male named Korth, looked up from his display. "I knew it was bad. I did not know it was this bad." "Most of you did not know," Sarah acknowledged. "Most of you went along with the crowd, never stopping to think about the consequences. That is perhaps the most painful part. We were not hated. We were simply overlooked, ignored, taken for granted until we became invisible." Kira finished reading and set down her display. Her hands were shaking slightly. "You are right. We did this. All of us. Even those who did not actively work against you failed to speak up when it mattered." She looked directly at the view screen, though she could not see Sarah's face. "I am sorry. I am sorry for what we did, and for what we failed to do. And I am asking, not demanding, that you give us a chance to prove we can be better." "How?" The question hung in the air. Kira had expected demands, conditions, terms for negotiation. Instead, Sarah was asking her to explain. "The Council is changing," Kira said. "Not because of your departure, though that certainly accelerated it, but because some of us have realized that the old ways were wrong, we are drafting a new charter. Equal voting rights for all species. Recognition of contributions regardless of seniority. Protections against the kind of systematic exclusion that you experienced. Words on paper, Sarah said. The old charter contained similar promises. They were ignored. Yes, but we are also changing in other ways. Kira thought of the secret meetings, the growing coalition, the species that had finally found the courage to stand against Valith dominance. The Violith are being censured. Their expansion has united their enemies. For the first time in centuries, the smaller species are working together, not because they like each other, but because they finally understand that divided, they can be exploited. And this happened because we left, partly, but also because your departure forced us to look at ourselves honestly. Some did not like what they saw. Sarah was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. It was still professional, but there was something underneath it now, something that might have been hope, or pain, or both. I need to consult with my government. This is not a decision I can make alone. We understand. I will return in 1 week with our response. During that time, I suggest you continue reading that data packet. Make sure everyone in your delegation understands exactly what happened. Because if we do agree to talk, it will not be to the council that we remember. It will have to be to something new. The communication channel closed. The human ship turned and disappeared back into the depths of Sol's territory. Kira sat down heavily. She felt exhausted, though the meeting had lasted less than an hour. Around her, the other delegates were still reading through the data packet, their expressions ranging from shock to shame. What do we do now? Korth asked. We read. We understand. We prepare to become the people we should have been all along. Kira pulled up the data packet on her own display. And we pray that it is enough. Back on Axiom Prime, the council continued to unravel. The Valith delegation had finally overplayed their hand. Their latest expansion had targeted a system under Kreth protection. The Kreth had responded with force. Now 2 of the council's largest military powers were engaged in an undeclared war, with smaller species being forced to choose sides. Speaker Velkor watched the reports with growing despair. In all his centuries of service, he had never seen the council so divided. The institution he had devoted his life to was tearing itself apart. Perhaps this is for the best, his aide Senth suggested quietly. The old council was sick. Perhaps it needs to die so that something healthier can take its place. And how many will suffer while it dies? Velkor asked. How many innocent people will be caught in the crossfire of our failures? He thought of the humans. They had tried to warn the council, in their own way. They had proposed reforms, requested fair treatment, asked only for respect, and the council had refused them, again and again, until they finally gave up. Now the bill was coming due. In her office, Thera continued her work. She had become the unofficial conscience of the reform movement. Delegates came to her for information about humanity's treatment. Journalists sought her analysis of what had gone wrong. Even council leadership had started asking her advice. She told them all the same thing, the truth. Nothing else would heal this wound. On the border of human space, the delegation waited for Sarah's return. They read through the data packet multiple times. Some wept. Others sat in stunned silence. A few tried to argue that the records were exaggerated, but the evidence was too overwhelming to dismiss. By the end of the week, all of them understood. All of them felt the weight of their species' failures. All of them wondered if it was possible to make things right. On the 7th day, Sarah's ship appeared again. The delegates gathered on the bridge, hardly daring to breathe. I have consulted with my government, Sarah announced. We are willing to discuss the possibility of renewed relations. But we have conditions. Name them. Kira said immediately. Not demands for power or reparations. We do not want to rule the council or profit from your suffering. We simply want the council to become what it always claimed to be, a partnership of equals, a place where every species matters, regardless of age or strength. That is what we want as well. Then prove it. Pass your new charter. Implement real reforms. Create a council worthy of the name. Sarah paused, and then invite us back. Not as servants, not as useful tools, but as partners. As friends. Kira felt tears forming in her eyes. We will. I promise you, we will. We will be watching, Sarah said. We will be hoping. Because despite everything, we never wanted to leave. We just refused to stay where we were not wanted. The channel remained open for a moment longer. Then Sarah added almost softly, "Good luck, Ambassador. You are going to need it." The transmission ended. The delegation began their journey back to Axiom Prime, carrying humanity's conditions in their hearts. The real work was about to begin. 6 months had passed since the delegation returned with humanity's conditions. 6 months of argument, compromise, and painful self-examination. 6 months of the hardest work the Galactic Council had ever done. The Grand Chamber was full again. Every species had sent their representatives. Even the Valeth were present, though they sat in the back, stripped of their leadership positions and surrounded by former allies who no longer trusted them. Speaker Velcor struck his staff against the floor. The chamber fell silent. "We are here today to vote on the new charter of the Galactic Council," he announced. His voice was stronger than it had been in months. There was something like hope in his ancient eyes. "Before we proceed, Ambassador Kira will summarize the key provisions." Kira rose from her seat. She looked older than she had 6 months ago. The work of reform had taken its toll, but there was also a quiet pride in the way she carried herself. "The new charter establishes fundamental changes to how the Council operates," she began. "First, voting rights. Under the old system, newer species had limited representation. Under the new charter, every member species has an equal vote, regardless of how long they have been part of the Council." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. This alone was revolutionary. Species that had been voiceless for centuries would now have the same power as the ancient founders. Second, committee membership. Under the old system, seats were distributed based on seniority and influence. Under the new charter, positions will be awarded based on demonstrated contribution and expertise. A species that has saved lives should have a voice in medical policy, regardless of when they joined the Council. More murmurs. Kira saw several representatives from smaller species nodding with approval. Third, recognition of service. Under the old system, contributions were often attributed to the wrong species or erased entirely. Under the new charter, all service to the Council will be documented accurately. History will reflect the truth, not political convenience. She paused, looking around the chamber. These changes will not undo the harm we have caused. They will not bring back the years we wasted or heal the wounds we inflicted. But they are a beginning, a promise that the future will be different from the past. The vote was called. One by one, species registered their approval. The Valeth abstained, but they were alone. The new charter passed with the largest majority in Council history. As the results were announced, Kira allowed herself a small smile. The hard part was over. Now came the harder part, living up to their promises. 3 days later, a message was sent to Earth. It was short and simple. The new charter has been adopted. We invite humanity to return to the Galactic Council as full and equal partners. The response came within hours. We accept. A delegation will arrive at Axiom Prime in 2 weeks. The news spread across Council space like wildfire. In the corridors of Axiom Prime, people stopped to embrace. On frontier stations, celebrations broke out. On worlds that had suffered most from human absence, there were tears of relief. Not everyone was happy. The Valeth retreated to their territories, nursing their wounded pride. Others whispered that humans would never truly forgive what had been done to them. But most felt something they had not felt in months. Hope. 2 weeks later, the first human ship entered Council space since the withdrawal. It was met by an honor guard of vessels from 12 different species. They escorted it to Axiom Prime in a formation that had been practiced for days. When the ship docked, the Grand Chamber was waiting. Every representative was present. Every eye was on the entrance. The doors opened. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked in. She looked different from the last time she had stood in this chamber. There were new lines on her face, marks of the difficult months she had spent helping her government decide whether to return. But her back was straight and her expression was calm. She walked to the center of the chamber, to the same spot where she had announced humanity's withdrawal 6 months ago. The silence was absolute. Speaker Velcor rose from his seat. He moved slowly, his ancient bones protesting every step, but he walked until he stood before Sarah. Then, To the shock of everyone present, he bowed deeply. "On behalf of the Galactic Council," he said, "I offer our sincere apology for the way humanity was treated. We were blind. We were foolish. We were wrong. And we are grateful beyond words that you have given us a chance to prove we can be better." Sarah stood still for a long moment. Then she reached out and took the speaker's hand, helping him straighten. "We did not come back for apologies," she said. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber. "We came back because we still believe in what the Council can be. A place where different species work together. A place where strength comes from cooperation, not domination. A place where the strong protect the weak and no one is left behind." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from 100 different worlds. "You have made promises, good promises, important promises. Now it is time to keep them, not for our sake, but for everyone's. Because a galaxy that would treat any species the way you treated us does not deserve to survive." The words hung in the air. They were harsh, but they were also true, and the Council needed to hear them. "We will hold you to your promises," Sarah continued. "We will watch. We will remember. And if you fall back into old patterns, we will leave again. Not in anger, but in sorrow. Because you will have proven that you learned nothing." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer. "But we hope you have learned. We hope that the pain of our absence taught you something about the value of respect. We hope that the new charter represents a real change, not just words on paper." She turned to face the empty seat that had belonged to humanity's representative, the seat that had sat vacant for 6 long months. "We are ready to take our place again, as partners, as equals, as friends." She looked back at the assembled representatives. "Are you ready to have us?" The answer came not in words, but in action. Every representative in the chamber rose to their feet. The applause began slowly, then built to a roar that shook the ancient walls of the grand chamber. Sarah walked to humanity's seat and sat down. For the first time in 6 months, the circle was complete. In the weeks that followed, human ships began returning to Council space. Doctors returned to hospitals that had struggled without them. Engineers returned to stations that had been falling apart. Soldiers returned to patrol routes that had been overrun by pirates. But things were different now. Humans were assigned to leadership positions, not just support roles. Their contributions were recognized openly. Their voices were heard in policy debates. And in the corner of her eye, Sarah could see representatives from other species watching, learning, understanding. The lesson of human absence had been hard, but it had been effective. On the anniversary of humanity's withdrawal, a memorial was unveiled on Axiom Prime. It listed the names of everyone who had died during the 6 months of chaos. Victims of pirate raids, untreated diseases, food shortages, and violence. There were thousands of names, from dozens of species. At the base of the memorial, a simple inscription read, "We remember the cost of forgetting." Thera stood before the memorial, reading the names. She had been promoted to a leadership position in the Council's new Office of Historical Accuracy. Her job was to ensure that the mistakes of the past would never be erased or forgotten. A figure approached and stood beside her. It was Sarah Chen, now serving as humanity's permanent ambassador to the Council. "I never wanted this," Sarah said quietly, looking at the names. "I never wanted anyone to die. I just wanted us to be treated with respect." "I know." Thera did not take her eyes off the memorial. "We all know. That is what makes it so hard. You did not punish us. You simply stopped protecting us from ourselves. And we proved that we needed you more than we ever admitted." Sarah was silent for a moment. "Do you think it was worth it? All this suffering, all this death, just to teach a lesson?" Thera considered the question carefully. "I think the suffering was always there. It was just distributed differently before. Your people bore the burden of being ignored and disrespected. Now that burden has been shared more equally." She finally looked at Sarah. "Is that fair? I do not know. But it is honest. And sometimes honesty is the only path to healing." Sarah nodded slowly. She reached out and touched one of the names on the memorial. A human name, one of the few who had chosen to stay in Council space despite the withdrawal. "We will do better," she said. "All of us, together." Thera placed her hand on Sarah's shoulder. It was a simple gesture, but it meant more than any speech or ceremony. Two people from different worlds, choosing to trust each other. Behind them, the sun set over Axiom Prime. The station continued its eternal rotation, carrying the representatives of hundreds of species through the darkness between stars. The Galactic Council had survived its greatest crisis, not through war or conquest, but through the simple, painful act of learning to see others clearly. The lesson had been hard. The lesson had been costly. But it had been learned, and in the end, that was all that mattered. The first human ships crossed back into Council space under full honors. The warning beacons fell silent. The wall between stars came down. Humanity had returned home. And this time, they would be welcomed as equals. The galaxy would never be the same.